Hi Freelancer, welcome to today's episode of the Freelance Blueprint. I'm your host Lisi, a freelance UX designer and digital nomad. Today, we're joined by Kat. She's a freelance web designer based in Berlin with her cats, and you might hear them a little bit in the background. She's also one of the two hosts of the Work in Progress podcast. Kat recently went through a rebranding and talks about how this has helped her find a clearer path in her business. We talk about how she got clients without having her own website, despite being a web designer, and how things shifted once she adapted a business mindset. Let's dive in. Hi Kat, thanks for joining the call today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Where are you calling from?
I'm based in Berlin in Germany.
Nice. If I wouldn't know anything about you, but I would meet your best friend, how would they describe you to me?
Oh, it's a good question. I think they would say I'm quite sort of bubbly. I like to laugh a lot. I guess I can be serious, but I'm always having fun, that sort of thing. I guess I would say I'm quite a good friend normally. Like I'm trustworthy. I try to be very reliable.
Normally?
Maybe. Well, we all have our days.
Yeah. What brought you to Germany?
So before I moved to Germany, I was living in London and I just lived there for 1 year and I had a remote job. And basically I moved to London in order to find work. So once I ticked that off, I was like, now I have a job, it's remote, I'm going to go travel. Basically, some people had told me that Berlin is a really cool place. I used to live in Barcelona a while ago and people told me that it was similar to Barcelona, but just not by the sea, basically, with colder weather. So like a worse version. So someone told me that and I was like, yeah, cool, I'll go to Berlin. I was planning to stay here for a month and then move on to travel to Istanbul to kind of live there and work there remotely for a while. And I just stayed in Berlin. Basically, after 1 month, I was like, oh, I'll stay a little bit longer. Then it was like, oh, I'll stay for the summer, and like always planning in my head to leave. And now, I don't know. Then I got an apartment. I bought some furniture. I have 2 cats now. So I guess it's where I am.
Nice. So before Berlin, you were in London. And where were you, where are you actually from and where did you grow up?
So I've moved around a bit. I grew up in Dubai. My parents are British, kind of, but they never lived a long time in England either. So we're kind of like a bit weird in that sense. So I grew up in Dubai and then I moved to Australia when I was about 14 or 15 and finished high school there, did some university. And then I think already at that point, I knew that I wanted to do remote work and travel and work and that sort of thing. So I kind of just left. And, when opportunities came, like I did English teaching, I did a bunch of other like working bars or call centers, that sort of thing, just to fuel my wanting to travel. And then I think I got to about 23 or 24 and I was like, okay, I can't like work in bars or call centers for the rest of my life. So I need to study a little bit. So I did a 1-year design course in Milan, which was for product design or like furniture design. And I basically fell in love with like chairs and lighting design. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to design all the chairs, all the lights. So I moved to London to find a job. Obviously, my dream didn't work out. And I found a job working kind of as a UX designer. Basically, someone needed help just in their office. But then I said to them, like, oh, I've just finished this design degree. And they were like, great, we need a designer. Can you design mobile apps? And I was like, no, but whatever. Let's go for it. So that's kind of where it started and how I got into design, basically.
I think it's so funny because it's quite similar to my background. So I also moved to London to find a job and I got into UX by accident. I actually wanted to do copywriting, which there is a writing aspect in design, like UX design. But people hear design and they don't understand how broad this term actually is because lighting design, chairs, is very, very different to a website. So how did you feel when you got that UX gig? Because nowadays it's quite tricky to get your first UX gig. And back then it was like, oh, design, chairs, cool, do a website, And today it's just very different. How was it like for you back then?
It was interesting, I guess. It's similar as you said that they were just like, oh, you studied design, so you can make mobile apps. And I was like, no, but okay. And it was also, as you say, back then. So this was maybe 10 years ago. UX wasn't a term yet. So even when people asked me what I did, I was like, I design mobile apps for blah, 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 saying like that whole sentence rather than a UX designer. Like I didn't even have a name. On my business card, it just said like head of design or something, which was also weird because it was a smaller company. And I was the only designer. So technically I was like head of design and marketing, which I'm like, I've just graduated. I have no idea what I'm doing. And now I'm suddenly like the head of a department, 2 departments. But no, I think sorry, coming back to your question, with the going into design, I feel like a lot of the way that we need to think in order to find a solution is the same when you are designing like a website or an app or a chair. Like you need to think of like what the target audience needs, what the problems are, like what I guess with chairs you'd think of like the materials more. Like what materials do we need to use to in order to like make this work? Whereas with a website, think of like the copy and the images in order to get to the final solution. So I think although they are really different, there's a lot of overlap in the way of thinking, like the problem solving aspect of it.
But also what you said about the term UX design, I'm getting asked less and less, oh, what is UX design? But there are still people that ask me what it is. And there's this whole
Yeah.
discussion of UX/UI designer or product designer or this kind of term. And then it's like product designer can also be for tangible products. So even if you call
Yeah.
yourself, oh, I'm not a UX/UI designer, because if I'm a UX designer, I'm also a UI designer because UI is part of UX and yada yada. It's this whole
Yeah.
discussion for this weird terminology, and people say you should call yourself product designer, and then it goes with this whole other confusion of like physical products. So if you
Exactly.
would describe to someone who doesn't know about UX, would you still fall back into I design mobile apps or like now websites mainly, I think? Or how would you describe it if someone would say I don't know what
Um,
UX is?
yeah, I think, which maybe I'm contradicting what I just said then. I think that actually, when you come down to the specifics of it, like UX versus web is so different. Like I
Mm.
compare the work I do when I do UX work compared to web, and I don't even think that they are like the same. Like you need really different skills. Like I think web is a bit more with like the brand, like organizing the business strategy, like creating messaging. Whereas when I design mobile apps, it's a lot of like states, like button states and stuff like this, or like using the correct icons. And, I think it's just very different. So if now when I describe myself, I say, yeah, web designer or like web design solutions, because I also, as you said, I want to get away from this design word, which I feel like when I talk to people, they hear designer and they're like, yeah, you make things look nice, which is not what I do at all.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a UI designer. I'm more of the UX part of it. So,
Also interesting what you said, because so many people think if we just try to get into specifics and the terms, etc., I don't think there will be one answer. There will be so many people that would say different things. And
yeah.
when it comes to web design, there are so many people who actually make it look nice, and they look at one
Mm,
product, they look at this one website or this one landing page, but they don't look at the overall brand, the brand strategy. Is it in line with what the brand wants to communicate? And is it the same kind of look and feel as it is on an app or on any other digital product they might have? And I think if you want to overlook all of these kind of things, it's extremely difficult to make sure everything feels and looks the same. So
mm,
compared to like when you mentioned you were head of design in a startup, even though you were the only designer, I did the same thing. I was the only designer. It's like, why? What do I do with this title?
yeah.
And technically in that case you would be in charge of making sure things are consistent. You're not really executing as much.
Mm,
It's very interesting when back then, if you look at it, you start maybe as a junior somewhere and then suddenly you're head of design, and then you start freelancing and everyone has this imposter syndrome of I have actually no
yeah.
clue what I'm doing. How did
Mm.
you feel when you started freelancing, when you offered web designs on your own?
Um, yeah, I think there was definitely that imposter syndrome that was there. And probably, as you said, coming from graduating, being like 24 and then being head of design and marketing, I was just like, I'm definitely an imposter. Like, I didn't work my way up to head of marketing. I just got lucky in a small company and became that. So, yeah, there was definitely a lot of imposter syndrome there. And I think in some ways I still have that, but I just try and focus on instead, okay, I do have lots of clients that keep coming back to me, like their websites are successful, like they are helping the business. So, trying to focus on that rather than like how did I even get here at all is yeah what I try and do. Mhm.
That's good. I subscribed to your newsletter, and you mentioned in one of them that you worked in fintech before getting into web design. What exactly did you do
Mm.
back then?
The job that I got, it was a small kind of development agency, and they made mobile apps for brokers basically, so FX, crypto trading, that sort of thing. So we, I guess, sold like white label apps to many different companies. First I was doing sales and marketing, so I was doing that and like getting clients. We used to go to trade shows, like finance shows, and like we'd stand there at the booth and I'd talk to people. So that was part of my job as a designer. And then, yeah, we'd onboard the clients, like understand what they needed, and then develop their mobile app based on their brand. So it was a lot of, with white label apps, like we designed the whole system, like how it would work, and then like just apply the brand to each of the mobile apps. So that was the main thing.
So when you did that, what was the point for you when you thought, okay, I don't want to work for a company anymore. I want to run my own business?
So I think having the freedom that I had in this job, because it was remote already, and like my boss was really flexible, he didn't mind when I worked, and he knew, like when I started, I also still worked in a pub. So he knew that I was doing like the two jobs, and then he knew that I was going to travel. So I felt like I already had a lot of freedom. But we also worked for which a company we still work for, which I really love the company, but like they're quite old fashioned. And I guess like the mobile apps are maybe not the main thing of their business. So the UX part of it is less mature and it goes very slowly. And I guess I just got frustrated with that, I might say an idea like, oh, we should do this. And then it would take 6 months to get through to management. And then I don't know, just like nothing moved fast. So I guess I got a bit frustrated with that and I wanted more of my own freedom. I really enjoyed working with multiple businesses and getting to know them. So I think that started me off, kind of inspired me to say like, yeah, I can do this. Like I've already done networking, I've already done client management. These are all the things. Why don't I just do it myself? So I think that was it.
Nice. I think many people, when they start, they think about it forever before they actually, okay, today I'm going to quit my job, or they apply for things, or they start kind of doing freelance gigs on the side. Did you
Mm.
quit your job and then go full-time freelance, or did you also have a transition phase?
Oh, yeah, like a big transition phase. I actually still work for this company now, but just as a freelance, because it works. Like I like the flexibility, they pay well, so and I like working with them. And I think because it's a bigger company as well, like I learn a lot from that aspect of it compared to working with smaller businesses in my freelance part. But yeah, so I basically transitioned with them. So I started working less hours until about part time and then taking on freelance clients. But I think for the first kind of 2 years that I was doing freelancing, it was definitely just like a side thing. I didn't do any marketing. I put like almost no effort into it. And it was just like when projects came to me basically. So I don't know if I was really freelancing properly until maybe 2 years ago, where I
Mhm.
actually started putting in work into like my brand and doing marketing.
When you say doing marketing, what do you mean by that?
I think mostly social media and actually doing like proper networking as well. So previously, I wasn't on any social media. I mean, I had LinkedIn, but I didn't use it. I just had a website, and I think I was assuming that just millions of customers would come to me just by having a website, which now I know as a web designer that doesn't work. So, yeah, it was mainly getting on social media and just being a bit more public.
And how did you get your clients in the past? Like, how did you get that first client? Or was it the company that you worked for that then hired you as a freelancer?
Yes, so they hired me as a freelancer, but I think my first clients were on websites like Fiverr. I think I started off with a business doing a business card for someone for like $5 or something, and then I designed a mobile app for 70 euros or something. So an entire
Wow.
mobile app for 70 euros. Yeah, it's so low. But it was such a good experience to, I think, have that. I mean, even if I didn't make any profit of it, it was really good to learn. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes in that project. So I'm glad that I was able to do it and learn from it so I never do that again. Especially the low price point. I'm not doing that
Yeah.
again. But I think we've all been there. Yeah.
I think there's so many platforms for freelancers, and Fiverr, Upwork are always being mentioned, but I kind of
Mm,
don't like that it's so
mm,
competitive amongst freelancers, and it kind of portrays as everyone else as competition rather than, hey, we can actually
yeah.
help each other out. And the downward spiral with the pricing, and that you have to pitch the
Yeah.
clients rather than the clients trying to find the right person. And yeah, it's what do you think about platforms like Upwork and Fiverr?
I also agree. It's not great for freelancers, especially if you're just starting off. I think in order to get your first job, because you need those reviews to actually like do anything on the platform. So to get your first job, you need to price it really low. And because some of the pricing is already so low, yeah, that's, I don't know, it's crazy. But I do think it is a good place for people to start off. Like, I'm really glad that I was able to get my first couple of clients on there. And then I learned enough from that then I could move on and start, I guess building into a business. Like, I guess that's the negative part, but I see the positive part also. that because at the moment I'm looking for some freelancers and I'm using Upwork. And some of them seem to have really good like profiles, it seems like, because it shows you how much they've earned. And some of them are earning like 100K already on Upwork. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. You
Mm.
must be running like either they have good pricing or they have good services. I don't know. It seems to be working for them. So yeah, I guess there's good and bad.
Yeah, I think for some people it's definitely useful, and also in your example, you got a UX gig that you can then put on your portfolio. You can show that, hey, I've done
Exactly.
some real clients, not just student projects. And
Yeah.
I think it's good to get started, but I also feel like it demotivates a lot of freelancers that start that, oh, this is what
Yeah.
I can earn, and I have to fight so hard to get one client. How do clients come to you nowadays? How do you find your projects?
Mostly through networking. So I just try, like, either in certain communities or just through LinkedIn or Instagram. I just try and form connections with people kind of for the long term. And always asking, like, do you know anyone like who needs a website? Maybe not you directly, but just, I guess it's a longer term plan, but it seems to work for me, just networking.
You also mentioned that now that you're a web designer, you know that just having a website isn't enough. And when I did research on you and I typed your name into Google, I just found your Instagram, your LinkedIn. I didn't actually find a website. Do you
Yeah.
have a website for yourself?
It's been a bit of a disaster for getting my own website. It should be launched at the end of this month, hopefully.
Okay.
Basically, about a year ago, I sort of rebranded myself and I tried to like build my website and I hired a freelancer. And it basically the project didn't go very well. Like he kept saying like, oh yeah, it'll be done like next month. And then it was like 6 months into it and like it wasn't done yet. But then by this time when he finished it, which it still wasn't really finished, um, good learning experience for hiring people. But then by that time, I had like rethought everything I was doing, that I wanted to hire someone to do my branding for me, like really go into who I'm targeting, like what services I want to offer. So then, yeah, it's now in progress. It should be there soon. But that's the thing, which is really interesting, that I haven't had a website for a while and I'm still able to get clients. I think just through word of mouth or when you present yourself well online, then it still works. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. I always say have a website, but you can still run a business without it. So even a web design
Yeah.
business.
It's also interesting
Yeah.
that you're not designing your own website, but I guess it's very difficult when
Oh, it's
when
so
you are
hard.
more or less the product to design your own thing.
Yeah.
You're your own worst client. So I think it's
Yeah.
quite smart that you outsourced it.
Yeah. It was so hard.
What made you think that, okay, I'm gonna create a personal brand? It's important as a freelancer to be seen, to be known, and start the marketing process. What was it like for you to work on your own brand?
It was amazing. Like it was such a good experience. And as you said, it was so hard trying to work on my own brand and my own website and my own copy for me. I just couldn't like get out really what I wanted. And every time I'd try and write the copy, I just feel like I was sounded so full of myself, or I don't know, it just like there were so many things that wasn't landing. So I hired someone and the sessions that we had together were so amazing. Like she really went in depth about like who I was and like how I wanted to be as a business, so much that it like a lot of things that I hadn't thought about yet, that then the questions she asked, and I was like, yeah, you're right. That is like part of maybe my personality that I want to bring into my business. One of the things was kind of a calmness. So I guess when I'm doing business, I don't want to be stressed or like angry. I don't think we need to like yell at our clients or anything like this. You know, I want like a calm, nice life. And then she sort of brought that out and was like, yeah, why don't we just bring that into your branding then? So that people, when they see you, they'll know that like, instead of being more professional, like, no, let's chill out. Like we can still have a successful project without being stressed or anything. So I think, yeah, it was just a really interesting experience. I'm super happy with what she came up with. So I would recommend to anyone. Yeah.
Okay, you have to give me the details later because
Yeah,
I did
I
my
would.
own branding and it's so hard. And I look at those colors, and when I meet friends who are into marketing or do social media, I sometimes like, can you have a look at my Instagram and tell me what you think about it? And they all say, oh, I love the colors. And that's it. And I'm like, are they just being nice?
Mm,
And because I did study advertising and brand management, so I have an idea about branding,
okay.
but at the same
Yeah.
time picking the right colors for something, or
Mm,
like I'm not an expert at it at all, and I also feel like I didn't do the whole course in the UK. I did 2 years in advertising school in Austria, and they had a partnership with that university in the UK. So I just joined the last year. And I had this feeling that in that 1 year in the UK, that final year, where you end up with a degree, we did pretty much as much work as we would have done within 1 or 2 months in Austria. So it wasn't
Oh,
challenging. The
wow.
projects, yeah, and everything was a group project. And the main projects were all group projects. And it was like, you
Yeah.
cannot fail if, because you can rely on all the others. Everyone else carries you if you really don't do anything. And there were students that barely did anything and they still got their
Hmm.
degree because it was all group
Yeah.
projects. They cannot fail the whole group. And it just felt a bit weird. It didn't feel like I learned that much about branding. So in
Mm.
the end, I still created my own branding. And it's so weird when you do it for yourself because like, do I really come across like this? And also how you see yourself is very different to how you actually
Exactly.
are. We often don't see our own talents. We don't see our own weaknesses as like, or maybe we see more weaknesses than our strengths
Mm.
and all these kind of things.
Yeah,
So it's an
exactly.
interesting process. So definitely give me the
Yeah.
details of that designer.
Yeah. Well, her name is Eva Kuto. Maybe we can link in
Oh,
the thing
yes, I
after.
know
Yeah.
her. I know her.
Yeah. No, she's
Okay.
so good.
I didn't know she did your branding. Cool.
So when I worked with her, and then I also worked with someone else for a brand voice, and both of these, I felt like it was not therapy, but it was something similar to that. Like someone, yeah, like telling me like, okay, the weaknesses, but how we can use like the weaknesses as positive, or like the positive parts of like my voice and how I talk. And I was like, wow, this is like not an ego boost, but like it made me feel really secure in my business and like who I was as well. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
Wow, perfect. Yeah, I've been following her for a while and I was actually considering hiring her, but then I was like,
Mm,
am I big enough to hire someone to do branding for me? Is it a bit excessive to invest into that at this stage? But yeah, actually, if you have the branding right, everything else
mm,
can be based on that. So it's a very important thing to do. So
yeah. I think it's made everything
yeah,
much easier because it's not just about how it looks as well. Like she really went into depth about how all my services was work and everything. So now when I went to then write the copy and do the services on my website, it made more sense because of our conversations that we talked about. So
nice.
yeah.
And I think that's also the nice thing with freelancers that if you need someone external, and
Hmm.
especially if you run your own business, if you even run an agency, if you have employees, getting someone from an outward perspective is always beneficial because you will see what
Yeah.
works, what doesn't work, even if it's things like onboarding, because you will get a more honest opinion from a freelancer who doesn't depend on you as much as an employee when you have like an exit interview.
But that's such a nice thing about also being a freelancer, which is what I love as well, that which I compare to when I worked as an employee, that as an employee there are all these different levels like management and like I don't know, you have to be nice to the CEO and stuff like this. Whereas as a freelancer, of course I want to be nice to my clients, but I appreciate the fact that I can be really honest with them rather than having to kiss their ass.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So you outsourced your website, you outsourced your branding. I
Hmm.
think another thing many freelancers don't realize, especially at the beginning of their career, is that there are services that you also need yourself, that you're not just a service
Mm,
provider or offering a certain product. You also need products yourself. May it be just a software like Figma or Webflow, whatever it might be that you're using. How did
mm.
you change your mindset into, okay, it is worth investing into branding, it is worth investing into hiring someone who does my website, even if it's something that you could do yourself?
I think I started prioritizing my free time more. Like I went through one period where, well, I guess also because I had less money, and there was one period, when you don't have a lot of money, you're like, I just need to work and like make as much money as possible. Then when that started going a little bit better, I was like, okay, I should prioritize like my free time and not do stuff that I don't want to do. So I think I heard a quote that was something like, don't just think like a CEO, but start like living like a CEO. So yeah, start outsourcing the things that you don't want to do, the things that are going to take you more time. And I think with the branding, especially, I just gotten to a point with my own website where I was like, I need to have a website basically. It's been too long. But I had too much client work to like take 3 months to work on it. So I was like, it's just never going to get done unless I hire someone to do it. So it was kind of a necessity, but also to have more free time and just to enjoy the work that I'm doing. So it was really nice at the end of last year when she was working on that and I had someone else working doing like engagement on my Instagram. I took off like a month or so where I couldn't really work, and it was really good feeling to know that like my business is still running when I'm not working. So
Yeah.
I think that's the direction I'm going, and I want to do less work. I want to enjoy my life a bit more, but still have a business. So I'm thinking like a business now rather than a freelancer.
I think that's also the right mindset to have. And it might take a while to get to that because at the
Mm,
beginning, you feel like, oh, I'm now outsourcing. I don't know. I don't know what you paid for branding and websites. But if you suddenly
mm,
spend like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 grand on something, it's like, oh,
yeah,
this is a business. And if you, as
yeah,
an individual, think of maybe you go on holiday and you spend 1,000 euros, dollars, whatever on a holiday, it might seem a lot. But then suddenly, when
mm,
you think as a business, spending 5 grand on a redesign doesn't seem that much. It actually seems like, depending
exactly.
on your size, it's the
Yeah,
kind of relationship you have to money changes a lot, and the money
mm,
mindset changes, and how you perceive the whole, oh, I have to hold on to this, or actually, like, no, actually, if I have invested, there's something coming back. Was there any kind of investment, maybe something that you outsourced? I think you mentioned the initial website designer. Um, was there anything where you feel like, I wish I wouldn't have done this?
yeah. I think with the outsourcing with the initial website designer, I maybe like trusted a bit too quickly. I just sort of spoke to someone, was like, "Oh, you seem cool," like, okay, and I hired, which was a good lesson that yeah, I need to vet a little bit more, interview. But I think when I first, especially first got on Instagram, there's a lot of, I guess, like gurus telling you what to do, that like you need this course in order to succeed and stuff like that. And I can't think of one especially, but I think I did invest where I didn't need to, maybe, like if someone, especially with the cheaper stuff, actually, like if someone was like, hey, 17 euros for like all these email templates, I was like, whatever, it's 17 euros. Like, I'm not going to notice even, but like then I have all these resources that I've paid for that I'm not using just because I bought them because they were cheap, basically, which I think like the stuff that I've invested that cost a lot more, they were all good investments. It's all like these cheap things that I never used. So,
Yeah. I think it's also very interesting with when you invest in something. And I recently, or in the last year, started investing a lot in coaching and online
mm,
courses, which at the beginning, if I would have thought of investing, I don't know, 2 grand into a coach, I would have been like, what the heck are you doing? You're just
yeah.
talking to someone, you know? But now it's like,
Exactly.
you get the knowledge of that person that it took them several years to accumulate within a short amount of
Yeah,
time, and it just speeds your progress up so much. And I
exactly.
think it's
Yeah.
so worth it. Have you
Mm.
done coaching as well?
Yeah, I have a business coach that I use quite often. Normally, we work together on a month-to-month basis. And as you said, yeah, it speeds everything up so much, and just makes everything easier. Like she has so many ideas in terms of like content and marketing, how I should do stuff. So even just one call with her saves me like 10 hours that I would have been struggling with something, thinking about it. Yeah, I 100% think it's worth it. Even last week, I did a consultation with another web designer about like pricing services and how to organize them, basically. And I think it was a 1.5 hour call for like 300 euros or something like that. 100% worth it. Like it saved me so much time, and now I have something clear in my head. So even 300 euros for an hour or something seems quite a lot, but it saved me 4 or 5 hours. So in my mind, that's good
Yeah,
investment.
yeah. And I think it's similar to what you mentioned before, the mindset shift that you had when you started investing in yourself and viewing your business as a business and living as a CEO.
Mm,
I also saw a quote somewhere, I don't remember where exactly, but it said something like, at the beginning, people are selling their time for money. So when you are a
mm,
freelancer and you have a day rate, hourly rate, and then once you grow, you realize that when you're a good business owner, you buy time by spending your
yeah,
money. So it's exactly
yeah.
what you're doing now. You save yourself the 3 months that you would have worked on your website, where you then could not have taken on client work or less client work. You outsource it to someone, and they probably do a better job because it's
Mm.
difficult when you're in your own head. So, yeah,
Exactly, yeah. I think sometimes it can be hard, maybe especially as designers though, because we get very attached to what we create, you know. I think maybe at the beginning I felt like it more. Now I'm trying to distance myself a bit. So especially, for example, with Instagram, like it's meant to be very personal and unique to you. So I feel like outsourcing that at first, I was like, oh, am I being dishonest that I'm outsourcing some stuff with Instagram when it should be me being authentic? Like it should be my authentic profile. And now I'm thinking, no, it's just a business. Like I started Instagram to make money, not to, it's not like for fun or anything. It's a bit part of my business. So it's fine that I outsource it.
When I started hiring a virtual assistant, she also suggested that she can just like people's posts or comment on them and things like that. And I felt a bit uncomfortable with that. I don't want people to think that it's me messaging them when it's not me. I understand that maybe just leaving a like somewhere is one thing, but actually
Yeah.
writing a comment, I'm also a bit scared that what if they say something that just isn't me, or if they agree, like write 100% to one of the posts that I just don't agree with, and it's on the
Mm.
internet. People that who don't know me, they like it just feels a bit weird to me. How do you overcome seeing your, like, for me Instagram still is and feels very personal. How did you
Mm.
overcome this? Okay, it's a business card. It is business, and yes, it's my face, but in the end it's business. How did you always feel like that, or what was it for you that gave you this mindset?
I think I'm still trying to overcome it. Like I do get that feeling, as you said, that sometimes it feels weird that there's someone else talking to, my followers. But I make sure that I'm always kind of present. Like I do read the messages and like make sure that the conversation's going the right way. Or generally it will be like me, my engagement person like reaches out to people and then like I continue the conversation. So it's not 100% someone else doing it. Like I'm still there. But I guess I just try and think of it more like a business and just detach myself from it. Yeah, it's a little bit, yeah, I'm still dealing with it, I think.
It's interesting because I struggle with it a little bit. I actually started because my coach told me, if you want to sell a product, and I'm currently working on selling a finance course that I've launched last year and
Mhm.
it worked quite well. So now I want to host it again.
Nice.
And he said,
Yeah.
you're going to make the most sales through DMs. And it's like, I don't want to sit there and reach out to strangers and then with the purpose of selling to them. And then he said,
Yeah.
well, you have to change your mindset. It's not, you're not selling to
Mm.
them, you're helping them. Like you
Yeah,
said, you
exactly.
wish you, exactly, yeah, you wish you would have known, like you had someone tell you at the beginning of your career about this finance information. So imagine someone would have helped you back then rather than sold to
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
But it
Yeah.
still feels a bit, they didn't invite me to sell to, it feels a bit weird to me to, it's like, hey, I have this product, by the way, and I'm pretending until then that I'm like, it's such a weird thing,
Yeah.
this whole selling part. And maybe I should just outsource it, like similar to you. Maybe it just feels a bit less icky to me, but then also,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like when people think on someone else. And I messaged someone and he replied with, am I talking to a bot or am I talking to a human? And I said, no, no, you're talking to me. Like, I'm not big enough to, like, I'm not even having many chat. And he was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, nice to meet you. And blah. And like the way he replied to things were so different. And there are just so many bots nowadays. There's so many automated things. And it's just, you don't even know anymore if you're talking to a person or
Yeah.
if you're talking to a bot.
No, exactly. But I think similar to what your coach said, that don't think of it as selling to them, but helping them. I mean, for me, I try to, like, when I message people, I don't sell to them straight away in the DMs. Basically, I just talk to them, find out how they got into design, how their freelancing is going, that sort of thing, and just have conversations with people. And then I find that the selling kind of happens then naturally. Like if I've been speaking to someone in DMs and then I post about I do a one-to-one support for other designers, so they can contact me just with any questions. So maybe I don't mention it in the DMs, but then I'll post about it and then they might see it and be like, oh, you have this service or something like that. I think just creating the connection with people straight away, then yeah, it's like I also don't like that. I was just about to say that, like, you create a connection and then you sell it to them. It feels very
Yeah.
manipulative. But I just try to focus on the connection part. And then if they do want it, then we can do that. But I also don't like this pushy selling. I also find with my web design clients, I don't I don't like to use sales tactics on calls and stuff like that. Like, if you want to work together, yeah, let's do it. If you don't, okay, you can find someone that suits you better. I don't know. Like, I'm just not into that sort of thing.
Yeah, but that's the tricky part, because the thing is, as a business owner, as a freelancer, you have to sell. Otherwise, you're not gonna
Yeah.
make a living out of it. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like, for me, selling is the hardest part. And I do genuinely, every now and then when I get a new follower, I just click on the profile, because like, who are you that you're following me? Why are you interested in this stuff? And then I check the profile, and maybe they're also a UX designer, and then I genuinely reach out, like, hey, why did you follow? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing, without thinking of selling. But then I get into this, oh, my coach told me to sell, and then I get this like weird guilty back and forth in my brain. It's like, why are you doing this? And and maybe you bother them. And I had some really, really nice conversations with people, or some people said, oh, I felt a bit lonely and our conversation really helped, or this really motivated me. And then it's like, yeah, I don't do this to sell undercover help you. This was actually a genuinely nice
Yeah.
conversation, and it did help you just by having that conversation. Even if you didn't end up purchasing my course, then it's
Exactly.
still
Yeah.
super nice. Yeah.
I think that's the difference between it being like sleazy selling. That, yeah, when I speak to people, also I generally enjoy the conversations, even if they never buy anything from me. Like, I just like talking to people. So I think that's maybe the difference.
Yeah. And especially on Instagram, like, we connected on Instagram. And I actually
Yeah.
tried to scroll back, because I also was talking to Nicoletta yesterday, and I tried to figure out how I came across your profiles. And I don't know if it was you first, if it was her first, or if I came across your podcast while I was doing research about this podcast. And still, like, you have this kind of community of other creators, of other freelancers, where you just chat,
Yeah.
and we all offer similar services, but I don't see you as
Yeah.
competition, or
Yeah.
I wouldn't be worried that you steal one of my clients or anything like that. It's just nice
Yeah.
that there are other people who do something similar, that maybe if you're in a weird situation, you can just ask them, hey, what would you do in this situation? Or do you have any recommendations? It's just, yeah, it's quite nice, this
Yeah,
community.
exactly. I think having that support is so invaluable. And with, I know, podcasts also like this, and with ours as well, it's like talking to people, just making them feel normal. Like, yeah, the struggles that you're having in your freelance career, we're all having them. Like, let's try and, talk to each other so we can figure out, even if it's not finding a solution, just, hey, you don't have to stress about this. It's normal. Don't worry.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. I also really love this community on Instagram. Like, I don't see, yeah, people as competitors. I would even, refer you or Nicoletta to other people who need work. Like, if I can't take it, yeah, definitely, I want to help other people get work. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. But I think it's also the fun thing with social media is, I noticed that the people that comment on your post, it's also always the same people. And then you
Yeah.
automatically message them, or you start a conversation, and you never know where it leads to. And one person, actually, she's now my subcontractor. She reached out to me because she did some marketing before. She is a freelancer, and she now wants to transition into UX, but she didn't have UX clients. And if I have any tips, and then she showed me some of her work. And I had a previous client reach out to me about some very UI focused stuff. And it's like, I could do the project, but I'm actually booked. But you know what? What if you work with her? She gets the guidance from me. It's my responsibility. So you still hire
Yeah.
me. If something goes wrong, I can fix it. But I also trust that she can do it. So it's a win win for everyone. You get to work with me because you reached out to me, but you also get someone else who is very talented. She gets her foot in the door. She gets her first official UX project. And I have a subcontractor who, every
Exactly.
day she works, I get a little bit from it. And it's, yeah, everyone gets something. She gets experience. It's
Exactly.
just super nice. And this all started because of some message she sent me in a Slack channel. So you
Yeah.
never know where things might go. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I always think like just reaching out is great.
You never, and actually, in the first season, I talked to, I was going to say a developer, but actually, she's also a friend. So we worked on the same client together, and she calls it her opportunity creation system, where you just chat with people, and you never know what's going to happen. And for
Yeah.
example, she said, I'm just going to go on a podcast. Yes, it scares me, but you never know what's going to happen from it. And it might not
Yeah,
happen instantly, but
100%.
maybe in the future someone comes across it. And then they're like, okay, there is this woman who does development, and I'm going to look at her website and end up maybe hiring her. So you never
Mm,
know where things might lead.
yeah, exactly.
Was there a project that you worked on that really stuck with you? Where there's something crazy happened, or maybe it was just a super nice feeling to deliver it, or yeah, something where you were like, okay, I want to do more of those, or never again, I'm going to work with a project like this.
Um, I think maybe not necessarily project based, but client based. That there are definitely clients that I really love working with, and some maybe less. So I think it's more the relationships that I build with the clients is like what I take away from it. That I feel really good that we managed to kind of take their dreams and put it into something tangible that they have
Hmm.
on the internet that they can show people. So I think, yeah, there's not like one that stands out to me, but it's mostly that feeling that taking someone's dreams and putting it out there and like making it real is, yeah, it's just the best thing for me.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's the most exciting part for me when I like on the whole UX journey. Like personally,
Yeah.
I love UX research and talking to the
Hmm.
users, but I also really love when you slowly transition things into UI, because that's when the client realizes
Mm.
their project is going to have like the
Yeah.
wireframes and stuff. They don't quite understand it or the flows,
Yeah.
but then once they have the UI, once they have the prototype, it's this moment for them, and it's so nice when you present it to them, and their lights
Yeah.
just like their eyes just light up, and it's this most beautiful
Yeah.
feeling when you help someone make their dream come true. Yeah.
Yeah. That face when they're like, oh, look at
Yes.
that. Like my business.
Yeah, it's so beautiful because it's also like with yourself, you have your own business now. And I guess you went through the
Yeah.
similar emotions when you saw your branding, and
Mm.
hopefully when you see your website. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Do you have any tips for people who are at the stage of outsourcing or hiring support for the branding? What is it that they should look like when hiring someone?
So I definitely think don't like jump into it too quickly. My issues that I've had in the past was just like I trusted someone really, really quick without maybe maybe even seeing examples, but just like, and okay, two things. So trusting people too quick, like make sure you kind of vet them properly, but then also put a contract in place that needs to say like what happens if like we don't meet the deadline. There needs to be some liability from both sides that if they don't deliver, then there needs to be a payment or something like that. I would say, yeah, like always putting contracts in place even for smaller jobs. Yeah, I don't know, I've had a couple of issues with that in the
Mm,
past, so yeah, don't I won't
yeah.
make that mistake again.
But sometimes you have to make those mistakes to then not do them again. And I
Exactly,
had something
yeah.
similar with a client where the project manager became a dad, which fine, but we didn't even know that his wife was pregnant, and then he was on paternity leave, and then they paused the project, and they didn't tell me. They told my subcontractor on the stand up, and then I found out through my subcontractor, and it's a bit like, great. So for the next 2-3 weeks, you don't need us. So she expected work, I expected work, and it feels like you have to give us a heads up on that. And
Yeah,
the kind of
exactly.
time when we deliver project is also ad hoc on the go. We stick to like a rough time, like a couple hours per week, but it's not set
Mm,
that every Monday or something. It's not set. So it was a bit like, okay,
yeah,
how do I deal with that, and how do we avoid this in the future, and should we still charge them for this? But then on what basis,
yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely also something to learn from both sides, on a perspective from when you hire someone, but also when you
Mm,
are being hired, because I was in the middle ground because they hired me and I hired her. So it's like, okay,
yeah.
it's very
No,
tricky.
exactly. This happened actually really recently to me with a project with a client that I'd worked with over the past few years, like on a flexible basis. When they needed me, they would call me and then I would work for them. And yeah, we didn't really have a contract in place. And then because it's a mobile app. So then I have a UI designer that I subcontract. And I had told him like, yeah, this client wants like a full mobile app in like March, I think it was. Like, can you do the UI for that? And he had planned like, yeah, so in March I will do a full UI for an app, but then the client changed their mind and was just like, no, we're going to delay, or I don't know, they did something. But then I felt really horrible because this guy was expecting a month worth of work, which a whole app is like quite a good like chunk of cash as well. And then I just had to be like, sorry, like they changed their mind. Which, yeah, if we had some sort of contract in place, that would have, it would have been okay. Like either we would have had a deposit or, something. But it was just a horrible feeling. I don't really mind about me, but for him, that he had planned, and I had to let him down because my client kind of let me down. Yeah, I didn't like that so much.
Yeah, it's not a comfortable, like, luckily she was about to go on holiday anyway, but still it's also for her kind of new, it's her only client. I have other clients to fall back on, whereas for her it was the only
Yeah.
client. So yeah, it's just a very tricky situation, but those are the things where you learn from, and that's the experience that you then don't forget about. So
Exactly. Yeah.
so we also talked about marketing yourself and promoting yourself. So you don't have a website, you're working on it, but you also have a newsletter. So what do you use your newsletter for? Is it just to show what you're working on in your business, or do you get leads through it as well?
It's mainly at the moment just for building connections. I'm really trying to get to know my audience a little bit better. I'm not sure exactly what that will utilize in the future, but I'm just trying to build up the list. And I feel like on Instagram, there's a certain way that you need to create content in order to, get engagement, likes, followers, all that sort of thing. And I guess I wanted, with the newsletter, I can write in a different way. It's generally a bit more personal. So maybe things that I'm not 100% comfortable sharing on Instagram about like either my clients or my personal life, then I go in that more into the newsletter. So in the previous one, I talked about a project that I'm in the midst of at the moment. And basically it's because I'm in the middle of it, I'm not really comfortable sharing about it yet on Instagram, but I still think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this situation. Basically, I got like quite a big opportunity to work on like a huge project that's costing like 100K for my client, which for me is, I don't know, something I've never done before. It's working with really experienced developers. So in the newsletter, I talk a bit more about my experience there and what I've learned from that, which, yeah, I can't really share on too publicly yet. So, but I also try and share some like takeaways from my experiences that you can learn from. So it's not just like my diary that you're reading.
And if people wanted to sign up to your newsletter, where can they sign up? Because normally I would have gone to your website.
Yeah. So in about a month, you'll be able to sign up on my website. But currently on my Instagram profile, it's just the link that you have there. And I send out about once a month at the moment. So don't worry, you won't be spammed, you know.
And the other thing you're doing as well, other than the newsletter, is you have a podcast, which is also what I think how I came across you. I'm not 100% sure anymore.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit about what motivated you to start a podcast and how it's going?
Yeah, good. It's going great. Where I do it with a friend called Nicoletta, who's also been on your podcast.
Yeah.
Basically, we met also through Instagram, similar to what we've spoken about earlier on, that we just saw each other's profile. I guess we connected and we said, hey, let's jump on a coffee chat, which is normally like 20, 30 minutes. I think we spoke for 2 hours or something like that. And there was just so many things that we connected on that it was just such a relief to talk to her and be like, oh, someone is going through the same thing as me. So whenever we did these coffee chats, we would say that to each other, like, oh, it's so nice to talk to someone who has the same problems. And, it's like this stress relief that we'd always have. So we're like, why don't we just record ourselves talking? Or we thought like, yeah, we should turn it into a podcast just for this exact reason, that hearing people talk about the same issues you're going through makes you feel a little bit better. So we talk about a lot of problems that you have as freelancers, what we have, how to overcome them. And we also have guests on as well. So talking about different perspectives from everyone about the same problems. So, yeah.
I also remember when we talked about the podcast, all the other skills and things that you realize that, for example, I say like all the time. And it's something I only noticed when I edited myself. And you also said that you both have been talking, you both have been trying to learn how to talk better.
Yeah.
Because I think communication is in so much, even in an email, if you just write an email, if you just write it differently, it can change how your client might feel when you talk about, let's say, increasing your rates. So Do you have any
Yeah.
tips for people who want to work on their communication?
I think record yourself. So a tip that I learned recently is record yourself um, with video and voice, and then only watch or only listen to it. Don't like watch the video, and then only watch the video and don't listen to the voice. So you can see all aspects of it, like what. And then the third step was transcribe it. So then you can just read like what you've been saying. So you see it from all the different angles, like how you move when you're talking, what you actually say, and how you say it as well. And I think then you can analyze a lot, like how you talk, how you tell stories. One of the things I found is that when I would start to tell a story, I would tell it like not in chronological order. I would jump like here and then go back and then, oh, I forgot to say this and go over here. I'm like, how do people like listen to what I'm saying? This makes no sense at all. So now I'm trying to talk more in like a logical order.
But I do the same. Or my friend, she called it open doors. So let's say you want to talk about the living room, and then you open the door to the basement, to the balcony and everything, and you talk about all these other things, and then it's like, what was I actually talking? Oh yeah, the living room. And that's how I talk. And yeah, it's definitely something that I have to practice.
Yeah, because in my mind, somehow these like really irrelevant details are very relevant to the story. And then I have to realize that like probably that's not relevant to the person listening. Like they don't need to know what color shirt I was wearing on that day when I got my first job. Like,
but maybe we need to know. Maybe it means that it's lucky to wear the specific color, or the client liked it, and that's why you got the job. But it's maybe, like in film. It's like in film, they say don't show a gun if you're never going to use it. So it's the same.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then they might be thinking, why did she tell me that she was wearing a green shirt? Like,
yeah, and then
is
you're
that
like,
relevant?
like it's such a cliffhanger. It's like, so what happened with that green shirt? Like,
exactly.
There are 3 questions I always ask at the end of the conversation, and one of them is, would you ever go back to a permanent job?
No. That was quick. No, I think now that I've seen the freedom that's available, and I think it's the freedom, also the income, like when you have the months that you have everything overlapping, and then it's like really good income wise. I don't think I would ever go back to having to go 9 to 5 into the office, being told what to do. No, I couldn't do it.
And if you could go back in time, let's say to the moment where you quit your job, and probably your bar job as well, to focus fully on just freelancing, what would you today tell your past self?
I think just stop worrying about everything. Like I overthink a lot and worry about like really insignificant details. Yeah, that would just make everything much easier. Like I'm really happy with the pathway that I took. Like I think even if I made mistakes, I learned from it. So I wouldn't change that, but I would just wish that I was happier and not worried so much during this time.
And if you think 5 years from now, imagine where your business would be, imagine who you are as a person. Maybe you're still in Berlin, maybe you moved somewhere else, maybe you finally made it to Istanbul. What do you think? What do you think your future self would tell you today?
Yay, good for you. Like, I think I would just be proud of myself for taking these difficult steps that I've taken like in the last few years. And just sort of say thank you. Like, thank you for taking those risks so that now I can live like with my cocktail on the beach. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the conversation and taking time today.
Yeah.
If the listeners want to learn more about yourself, where can they find you?
So on Instagram at cat.irwin.design, or LinkedIn also at cat.irwin.design. I'm not sure about if it's dashes or dots there, but you'll find me. And yeah, those 2, you can sign up to my newsletter on the Instagram profile. And yeah, I hope to see you soon.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really enjoyed talking to Kat and learn how she tackles outsourcing, sales, and the lessons she learned along the way. I'm adding all the links about Kat in the description of this episode. Also, in the meantime, she has launched her website, so go check it out. If you like this episode, please leave a review and hit the follow button. This helps the Freelance Blueprint get suggested to more freelancers like you. And feel free to share this episode with anyone who you think can benefit from listening. That's all from me, and I can't wait to have you join again next week. Bye!